A very good morning to all my dear listeners. What I wish to share with you this morning is the following thought. A farmer once had a very lovely horse, and this horse was admired by all the villagers. And one morning, this horse went missing, and all the villagers gathered at the farmer's house and said, "What an unlucky man you are! You have lost the best horse and the best admired horse of the village." And the farmer replied, "Lucky or unlucky, I don't really know." A few days later, the horse returned with another wild horse. And again, all the villagers gathered at the farmer's house and said, "What a lucky man you are! You have a new horse." To which the farmer again replied, "Lucky or unlucky, I don't know." A few weeks later, the farmer's son, who was also an admired youth of the village and was loved by all the villagers, was taming the wild horse, and during this process, he fell off the horse's back and broke his backbone. And now again all the villagers gathered at the farmer's house and said, "What an unlucky man you are! Your son has a broken back." To which again the farmer replied, "Unlucky or lucky, I don't really know." Months later, civil war broke out, and all the able-bodied youth in the village were recruited into the army. And the only youth that was spared was the farmer's son, because he had a broken back. And now again the villagers gathered at the farmer's house and said, "What a lucky man you are! All our sons have gone into the battlefield. Only your son has been spared, and you are very, very lucky." To which again the farmer replied, "Lucky or unlucky, I don't really know." A few days later, while the civil war was still going on, the civil war was still raging, the farmer's son was out in the yard feeding his horse when a cannon fire struck on him. He fell to the ground and he died. Now again all the villagers gathered back at the farmer's house and said, "What an unlucky man you are! You have lost your son, though he has not gone into the battlefield." Again to which the farmer replied, "Unlucky or lucky, I don't really know." So here we see that the farmer was exercising non-judgment. You cannot judge any event as an end. There is no perfectly formulated end to any of our life and to any of our planning. There is always good at a time, and this good can become bad, and this bad can also become good. I recall during my childhood days, we had a neighbor, a lady who was around in her 30s, who lost a husband who was working in Malaysia in one of the largest British rubber plantations as a doctor. And one day, while this doctor was returning from the dispensary, the estate dispensary, he was mauled by a tiger and he was killed. And now everybody in the city gathered at a house, including the priest, and said, "What an unfortunate person. You lost your husband at this very young age." A few years later, she received a telegram from the company, from the rubber plantation. In those days, of course, there was no email. She received a very long telegram stating, "Please come down to Malaysia to collect your husband's insurance claim," which worked out to millions in those days. A big claim because this was a very large British rubber plantation. She flew to Malaysia. She gathered in those days there was no telex transfer, electronic fund transfer. They had given her a check for a huge amount. She came back, and in those days there were no flights to Trivandrum and to Kerala. All the flights were to the then, it was called Madras, today Chennai. And as she was driving from Chennai, or Madras in those days, back to Trivandrum, she met with an accident and she died along with her driver, leaving her children penniless, homeless, and parentless. So, my dear listeners, there is always a time for good, and this cannot be judged as an end in itself. This good can be turned into a bad situation, and that bad situation can also turn into a good situation. Thank you for lending me your ears. Stay safe and break the COVID-19 chain by staying in isolation. Bye-bye.